he made us gods.
It's the freedom. It's what you can do. I mean, you can be good, you can be bad. You can do what you want. It's a little playground.
I kind of feel pretty powerful. That was the moment, of course. That's what you are. You're God.
And let us soar to new heights.
Magic Carpet gives you a full sense of just freedom. We all love that. We love the idea of just being able to go anywhere and do anything. Peter sensibly tapped right into that.
Although he would struggle along the way.
He literally was the archetypal sort of struggling artist.
His originality paved the way for others.
Peter likes to push the boundaries. Sometimes you think, my God, how are we going to achieve these things?
This is the story of one of gaming's biggest innovators. This is the story of Peter Molyneux. Before computers were a blip on the horizon, a young Peter Molyneux learns how to play by his own rules. Peter's parents play an early role in shaping his future career.
My mother ran this toy shop, and that sounds, you know, wonderful being a kid. You think you would have every single toy known to man. Actually, what it meant is we got all the things that were broken, that people didn't want to buy. So we got lots of games without rules in, or Monopoly sets without money, or so you just sort of had to kind of make up the rules. I think that had a big effect.
Peter also sees the value of running his own business.
When I was 12 years old, I employed my sister and all her friends to cut people's lawns while I just sat there and watched, which was great. And I paid them about, you know, a cent an hour and then collected $1.
Peter's business sense leads him to start his first company in the exploding market of computer sales.
I came up with this really, really dumb idea. If we could sell floppy disks, on these floppy disks would be some free stuff, like maybe a free game. It was such a stupid idea because no one really wanted floppy disks with loads of stuff on there. If they wanted floppy disks, they wanted floppy disks that were blank. And what I found was that people were paying more attention to the software on these disks than anything else.
And that realization is all Peter needs to put himself on track to designing his first game.
And in those days, you know, you only had to make a game which you could shoot things. It didn't matter what you shot, and it would pretty much well be successful. But I decided instead to do a business game called The Entrepreneur.
Peter's first foray into gaming is less successful than he hoped.
And I was so completely convinced that this was going to be a great, amazing game that I phoned up the post office and said, I'm expecting a lot of post. I've cut a bigger post box in front of my front door. I sat by the post box waiting to hear this truck turn up with, you know, tens of thousands of orders. But instead, these two envelopes came fluttering through the door, and both of them had orders on, and I'm pretty sure they were both from my mother. And that was the sum total of orders that I received for that game.
And a spelling mistake gives Peter the tools he needs to start making games full-time.
I then started up another company called Taurus, and there was this phone call from this company called Commodore and said, you know, we've heard about your company and we're really impressed with it, and we'd like you to come on over and we'd like to present our machine to you and see what you think of it, because we'd love your product on our machine. I thought, that's just fantastic. They gave me absolutely the red carpet treatment. They took me out to lunch, demoed the machine to us, said, well, you know, we really want to convince you to put your product on our machine. And then it came to the end of the day, this guy said, just when will your network be available? And it suddenly occurred to me that our company was called Taurus, spelled like the star sign, and there was this other company called Taurus, spelled like the donut. I can still remember it vividly. Going through my head, there was like an angel and a devil on my shoulders, and one saying, go on, you've just got to tell the truth, you know, you can't lie like this. And then this other voice saying, just lie, get the machines, go to the stand space and just sort it out afterwards. Of course, I ended up lying and saying, yeah, we're going to have your network working in a couple of months' time. we then made the step into making games.
In 1987, Peter founds a new company to focus on making games and calls it Bullfrog. But making a hit game proves to be difficult.
Yeah, I first met Peter when I was about 15 years old. He was really poor, actually. He was really...
We were really running out of money.
He'd have this the same shirt on every day, and he'd be hunched over his computer with a cigarette hanging out of his mouth, and there'd be cigarette ash all over his computer.
We couldn't really afford the rent.
He literally was the archetypal struggling artist. He was really just trying to get off the ground, and his business was struggling at the time.
This game was slowly coming together. It started off with this landscape. You know, the next thing I thought, well, why don't we put some people on this landscape? So we had these little people moving around. And the next thing I thought was, why don't we have them building their own little houses? And that was fine. Populous was born out of my incompetence as a programmer. This is the absolute truth of it. Because I couldn't work out a routine to automatically flatten the land so that little people could build a big enough house. So I thought, why don't I just get the player to flatten the land? So I had them just build a little land and just wander around the shore, and that gave rise to this thing called exploration that they could explore. And that was because I wasn't smart enough to do the code. We played it, and there was this feeling that, hey, we're just moving the land up and down, and I kind of feel pretty powerful. You know, I can sink people in the water, and I can, you know, chuck them out of the house, and, you know, I feel a bit godly. And then that was the moment. Of course, that's what you are. You're a god.
It's definitely the freedom. It's what you can do. I mean, you can be good, you can be bad, you can do what you want. It's a little playground.
As the game gets close to finishing, word begins to spread.
When this magazine phoned us up and said, look, we'd like this editor called Bob Wade to come down, and he was one of these superstar journalists in the computer industry. He wants to come down and meet you. He's looked populous. So we went down to the pub. So I brought him loads of drinks. We had lots and lots of drinks. And eventually, after about 10 pints, I plucked up courage and said, what do you think of Populous? And he said, it's the best game I've ever played. Though only one thought went through my mind, he must never play the game again because it'll change his mind.
But will the gaming world respond as well to such an unusual title?
We got rejected by quite a lot of publishers.
In 1989, Peter Molyneux's fledgling company, Bullfrog, struggles to convince publishers to take a chance on the unusual Populous.
The way we convinced Electronic Arts was to get them down and to get them to play the game. And I think they started to see a glimpse of what the game could be. And then eventually they released the game.
On June 1st, 1989, Electronic Arts releases Populous, and word spreads quickly about the game.
And I got this phone call 3 weeks after it was released from one of the chief people at Electronic Arts. And he said, how's it feel to be a millionaire? It just seemed like suddenly there was this whole completely different world unfolding.
Critics and fans can't get enough of the highly original game.
One of my memories from college is a friend of mine coming up to me and saying, there's this game called Populous. You must see it. It is the greatest game I have ever seen. And I played Populous. Like, this is the greatest game I've ever seen.
You know, innovated a whole genre. I mean, the God game comes from Populous. While that game was fairly simple in design, the idea has gone on and multiplied. Like everything, I think, kind of owes something to Populous.
But Peter realizes that success can sometimes bring pressures of a different kind.
Suddenly, everyone turned around and said, what are you going to do next? And our publisher, Electronic Arts, said, look, it'd be really great if you could get your next game out by Christmas. We were at March at that time. So I had this idea for a game called Powermonger, but it was such an enormous amount of pressure to get that game finished that actually I made the fatal mistake of having a good idea, programming that idea up, and actually releasing it without ever really playing it.
Despite the hectic release schedule, the game does reasonably well, and Peter gains a reputation as an innovative designer.
We had won tons of awards for Populous, for Powermonger. Populous 2. I mean, that is an incredible feeling in a company. You know, this feeling of success, a feeling that we as a company were going somewhere. And I think it gave us all a confidence.
The success of their first 3 games allows Bullfrog to begin work on several new titles at once, including a game that lets you pilot your own magic carpet.
Magic Carpet is one of the early games that really gives you a full sense of just freedom. We love the idea of just being able to go anywhere and do anything. Peter sensibly tapped right into that and, knew that that's what people want to do.
Theme Park. And the sci-fi Syndicate.
Syndicate was another really successful game. It was pretty violent. It was about this group of people that you controlled that went around a city battling against other groups of people.
With a string of hits under Bullfrog's belt, publishers start sniffing around their offices.
One day, the phone started to ring, and there were all these big companies saying,